How's it going? Dave from Comic Book Investments. So today, what we're going to go through is West Coast Avengers 45. But it's a little different. This one has what is called a Mark Jewelers insert. Now, if you can look at that, it's basically a bunch of pictures of rings. Engagement rings, and it had a little mail away coupon in it that you can mail away to get an engagement ring. Also, I have over here another one from Captain America 323. And so yeah, you basically would fill this out. Let's see, you can get a ring for 3 diamond engagement ring matching 14K wedding rings is $600. Or you could pay 20 months worth for $30. So you pick out these engagement rings and you'd mail them away, and then they had all different kinds. They also had a lot of them that had to do with, if you can see right there, military. The reason why they had these engagement rings, and they had these, is because Mark Jewelers inserts were put in to comic books that were put on military bases, so either here or overseas. So they had these inserts, and so when the military people were reading them, and they're like, military people like to get married, so they would mail away for these rings and, get married, and they'd have a ring. So basically, these inserts were put in only for comic books that were sold on military bases, like here or overseas or wherever it was sold, because it's geared toward just military people. That's why they had rings that were geared towards like the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, all that kind of stuff. So they're actually a lot more rare. I've seen them go as high as the early 90s, and then the oldest I think I've seen was in the 70s, like mid 70s. I know I've had a Spider-Man 129 with a Mark Jewelers insert. So they spanned, like this one right here, like this Captain America's 86, this West Coast Avengers is 89. So they were in it during the 80s, and I think they go as high as the early 90s. And they were definitely in the 70s. I had some. In the 70s, in those you can't see, but like they're like just paper, like glossy paper. But the ones in the 70s were like a more thicker, almost cardboard, like a postcard. They're like that. Like if you got a magazine and you're clipping something out and you're sending it away, they're like that thicker paper. These are just more glossy. And I think they had like a little envelope flap that you would lick and send away. But yeah, they're given out to people that buy comics in the military. And that was like the marketing ploy for the Mark Jewelers. It's called Mark Jewelers because that was the company that made these rings and sold this stuff. So they do add value because they are much more rare, much harder to come by. And it was like a much smaller percentage. So let's take a look at how much more a Mark Jewelers insert versus a non-Mark Jewelers insert will get you. All right. Okay, so let's look at the numbers of the Mark Jewelers insert. So I have a little sheet here. These are actual sales data I brought up. There's not that many sales because Mark Jewelers is probably roughly around 5%, give or take, throughout the years. It seemed to be a little more common in the older ones back in, the early 70s and stuff like that. But here, if we look at Spider-Man 129, I try to get most recent sales data on some of them. Some of them got a little older. But this one, a 9.0, you're looking at normal, non-insert, same time period around March of 2021, 4,200. With the insert, 4,100. So dip. New Mutants, which is a newer one, and like a 9.2, one sold for 1,000 with the insert, a normal sold for 550. So 45% jump. So it kind of varies. Tomb of Dracula 10 and an 8.0, you're looking roughly around the same. 1100 versus 1175. That was back in July of 2020. So that's why some of these numbers might seem low, because I did back then. Marble Spotlight 5 last month was around the same, just a little 5% drop. This was a National Diamonds insert, which National Diamonds was basically the precursor of Mark Jewelers. Same thing, just an insert they put in there for military people. The exact same thing, just a different company that did it right before Mark Jewelers for a couple years. Hulk 180, it's a little jump here. And also these numbers might be a little skewed because maybe some of these, there's only like one sale, and it could just be a buy it now. Someone listed for that and they bought it. Compared to these numbers over here, I factor in like auctions and buy it nows. So Hulk 181, 3,000 for 3,050. Yeah, it's like, you go down even like down here, newer book, you're looking at $95 versus $100. Basically the same. I mean, if you average this all out, it's a positive 6.57%, increase versus a jeweler's versus a non-Mark Jewelers insert. Now, obviously, these are all keys. The reason why I had to go for mostly keys is because there's just not that many sales data in the non-key stuff, and so it's just impossible to find one that's comparable. You might have like some random issue of Spider-Man. You might just have like one maybe of a Mark Jewelers insert, and it's like many years ago, and it doesn't, you can't compare it to something now, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot harder to find sales data, so I had to go with keys. The only one that seemed to go really up was the New Mutants 98 because it was newer. I'm thinking maybe the newer stuff had even less, less available than the 5%. But yeah, if you can, I brought up a few that we can look at. What is this? This was a Hulk 181. So we're looking at the 7.0. See back in 2019. Now this number says 2885, but I opened them up and went by the actual same month. 2019. So you can kind of see what they would go for around the same time. So it's even, And then you got Spider-Man. Which one did I say it was? A 9.0. So you're looking at a 9.0. Recently, March, sold for 4,100. So April's one sold for 44, but let's also look at March because that's what you're comparing it to. Compare it for around the same month. So you got, all these different sales in there. Then you got, Batman 8.0. You're looking at 890. One just sold. Last one sold was like 240 way back then. So you look at March and you're like, okay, you got one sold for 800. And that's pretty much what they were going for a little bit before then. A slight jump up in April, as you can see. But yeah, they're just not, I don't think they're that desirable. The only one that seems to be a huge jump is this New Mutants. Like, look at the price difference on these 9.8s. Here, it's slight difference. The Australian variant, that's the expensive one. Here, it's like double. It's gone down comparatively, most recent sale. That could just be like a buy now, and someone didn't know what they had, and they didn't know the difference. But look at 9.2, looking at 1,000 versus 500. So it only works, it seems, on, for some reason on this New Mutants. But overall, there's not much of a difference. I think it's kind of a cool little thing, but it doesn't really add much value to it. Except in certain cases like the New Mutants. But overall, I think it comes down to the newer stuff is going to be more rare, so it's probably less than 5%. Of the total value print run. So yeah, the two I have are newer, the ones I showed, the Avengers West Coast and the Captain America. So they'll probably do slightly a little bit better. I can see. Let's see. Let's see if there's any sold. Yeah, number 323. So let's look to see if 323. Mark Jewelers insert. Wow, there we go. Huge difference. I think it pertains. It's because it's the newer stuff. That's nice. I don't think mine is like a 9.6. So, I mean, if you go by this math, looking at maybe 3 times of this, roughly, probably won't equal 3 times. What was it? West Coast Avengers? Or was it Avengers West Coast? I think it was West Coast Avengers. What was it? 45? 45, I believe. So, in here, none. There's none. So, I mean, I think, yeah. Oh, and I think it was also 9.6. But yeah, as you can see, there's a slight jump in the newer stuff, probably because it was just a lot less common, but not so much in the older stuff. Maybe it could be that we had more people in the military comparatively back in the day, or maybe it was easy because when comic shops opened up, because before in like the 70s and stuff like that, what you see on these right here, most of these are probably in the 70s and stuff like that, except you got an 80s, 1980 I believe, or somewhere around there, and then that's later 80s, but it's a lower grade. Maybe because back then everything was in the newsstands, wasn't really comic shops, so the only way a person on a military base could get it would be have to go to a newsstand, as compared to now they have comic shops, and maybe the comic shops can hold books for them, and then they come and pay once a month or something. Maybe it's just easier, so they didn't put as many inserts comparatively back into the older ones. I don't know. So, yeah, just a slight jump. Nothing too special except in certain cases of like the newer stuff, which probably is more rare. So, there you have it. I hope you like this. All right, thanks.